Hello friends, welcome. Today we would be talking about the Christaller central place theory. So the Christaller, he was an author from Germany and he propounded the central place theory in 1930s. His theory was mainly based on the agrarian setup and the capitalistic society of Germany. So this theory was mainly applicable to the period which was mainly dealing with kind of agrarian setup. So a lot of farmers into the system and the society was mainly capitalistic. Now, before we start understanding the theory given by Christaller, we must first understand the essentials and the elements behind the theory. As we all know, there is a simple principle of demand curve in economics where price and quantity, if we draw on two axes, we can say the demand curve is downward sloping. If we know the demand curve, we can find out the production. So we know the production point here. Now what Christaller gave, the idea behind the Christaller's concept was the sales or the volume that a market can drive from a given production point. So if I say here P is the production point and this is the distance, as I move away from the production point, the demand for the commodity would decrease and there would be a downward sloping curve here. So there would be the highest demand of services in the central area and slowly and gradually the demand would start decrease. But this is the area that would be served by the production point here. Okay. Based on this theory and this concept, Christaller said that there is a circular area or a circular region which is served, which I can say is marked in the figure A. Now, if there is a circular point of production here and there is a point of production, another point of production here, slowly and gradually what will happen is the services will start to come close together. So if I have 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 points here and similarly 5 points here, what Christaller said, all of these are located at an equidistance of 4 kilometers. Now if all of these points are located at an equidistance of 4 kilometers, I can draw circles like this. But if I draw circles, what is the major drawback here? There are regions of unserved demand. So what I am marking in blue is the region of unserved demand because that is not fulfilled by either of the three settlements here. So what would happen is, if I use a circular shape, there would be either regions of unfilled demand, that is the common area here, or there would be regions of overlap. Finding difficulties with these two patterns, Christaller suggested that there should be a shape which exactly fits one another and the properties of circular retain. So he suggested a shape which is hexagonal or you have 6 sides. Now if I draw 3 circles here and join the points of these 3 circles, it gives an equilateral triangle. So this equilateral triangle, if I'm trying to see here, slowly and gradually, you can see what I'm marking in red. So this forms, if I join different triangles here, okay, I am making another triangle here, and so on. So this would finally give me a hexagonal shape. So what Christaller suggested was, hexagonal shape is the best way to depict the settlement processes and the spatial structure for a hierarchy of settlements. So he talked about a spatial structure here and he said the best way to depict is a hexagonal shape. Now you can best equate this to a beehives example. So beehives are technically, if you can see here in the figure, they are hexagonal in shape. The main aim is to retain all the honey inside the beehive. Okay, so they are closely knit and latticed together. So this was the basic concept which Christaller adopted for most of his theories and the basic reason why he chose the shape of the settlement region or the growing urban region as hexagonal. Now, once we are clear with this fact, let's understand, first move on to the assumptions that he took place into consideration, and then we'll move on to the basic fundamental terms that he used. So here are the set of assumptions. He said that any surface that we are catering to must be an isotropic plane or a plane area. The resources must be evenly distributed, and so must be the population. So you have resources and population which are evenly distributed over the region. All the settlement, as he said, must be equidistant. So he said that they form a closed lattice with each settlement 4 kilometers from the another settlement. So all settlements are equidistant and exist as a triangular lattice. So this is what he gave. Okay. Then he said, as you move away from the main hub of the region, the demand for the commodity decreases. So that's where he gave the distance decay mechanism. He also believed that there is perfect competition in the market and all sellers try to maximize their profit. Now there are two things that he basically focused. The sellers or the retailers, their main aim is to maximize the profit. Okay. While the consumers, on the other hand, their main aim is to minimize the cost and minimize the travel distances. So the travel cost and the travel expenses. He also believed that consumers have same income level and same shopping behavior. They have same purchasing power and same demand for goods and services. They will also try to visit the closest place, and since they will try to visit the closest place, they will minimize the cost of traveling and minimize other costs. And finally, he said, no provider of goods and services would be able to earn extra profit. So these were the assumptions that were taken into account by Christaller. Now, as we know, most of these assumptions are abstract in nature, because in real world we cannot say a region has equal population or equal resources, or all the consumers have same income and same shopping behavior. So most of the assumptions that Christaller considered were abstract in nature. Therefore, these assumptions became later on the major critics for the Christaller's theory. Now, on the basis of these assumptions, let's move on to the basic concepts that Christaller tried to give. So Christaller basically gave three fundamental concepts. The first was the concept of centrality. So the first is the concept of centrality. The next is the threshold. And finally, you have the range. So what Christaller here is talking about is, in the concept of centrality, he says that there is an urban region which centrally serves the remaining region, and because this is a central region, most of the demands here can be fulfilled by the central region. So he focused on centrality. Then was the threshold. Threshold is the minimum market that is required to sell a product. For example, I say that there is a colony A, then there is a colony B and colony C. Okay, there is a fruit seller shop here. Now there are three divisions in each colony: 1, 2, and 3. So there are 3 rows. So you have B1, B2, and B3, C1, C2, and C3. Okay, so all the people from zone A1, B1, and C1 are the buyers for this fruit shop. Okay, so you have A1, B1, and C1 who are buying from this fruit shop, and they are the kind of minimum, that is the minimum market for this fruit shop person. So that is the threshold. So it's the minimum market required to sell the product. So this fruit shop minimum requires the people from households of A1, B1, and C1 for acquisition of commodities from him. Now the next is the range. Range is the maximum distance the consumer is willing to travel to procure the product. So I can say like A1, A2, and A3. Similarly, B1, B2, and B3. and C1, C2 and C3 can all go and procure fruits from the shop. So that is the maximum range or the maximum distance that is served. So you have the range here. Now this is fruit shop 1 and this is fruit shop 2. What is happening is the range of 1 is coinciding with the range of 2. So if I draw a straight line here and I draw continuous circles around, so if I try to maintain the shape, there can be a kind of hexagonal network that would be drawn. Okay, so that is another concept where we say that he slowly and gradually adopted the shapes to be hexagonal in nature. That is one of the very important reasons. Now, before we go on to further, let's understand the model of central place theory in very, very simple terms. So you have a large center here, you have two medium centers, and I can say 6 small centers here. Now, the large center, the medium center, and a small center, I am mentioning the facilities available at all these centers. So let's say the small center has a restaurant, the medium center has a restaurant plus a game zone, the large center has a restaurant, has a game zone, and also a multi-specialty hospital. Now what would happen here? Since this large region is serving as a restaurant, is also having a game zone and a multi-specialty hospital, the medium settlement would try to import the facilities of multi-specialty hospital from the large center. Okay, and this medium center would try to export the game zone facilities to the small center. So this is on behalf of the what I'm saying, the import and the export processes within the large, medium and small settlements. Now, on the other hand, what would be the mechanism from the side of small settlements? The small settlement would try to take facilities of multi-specialty hospital directly from the large center. Okay, but for the game zone facilities, it can either go to a medium city or to a large city. Okay, so for game zone, it can either go to medium city or a large city. Now, what would be the factors that would be taken into consideration? For example, if the person here just want to avail the facility of game zone, he might go to a medium city. But if he feels that beyond game zone, I want to do 4 or 5 other stuffs there, so he might prefer to go out to a larger artery and a larger center. So here is where the concept of market and transport enters into. Now, to understand the concept of market and transport, Christaller devised what is known as the K mechanism or the K value. Now, what is the K value? Before we go on to the 3 basic principles propounded by Christaller, let's first understand the concept of K value. So, K value is basically the total number of lower order settlements that are served by the central settlement. So, if I say in this hexagonal model, these are all the villages, all 6 of them are the villages, and the center one is a kind of hamlet. So what is happening here is K value is the value or the total number of settlements that can be served by one higher order function, or it is a kind of multiple of proportion of multiple of services that can be served by a higher order function. So now let's move on to what is the K value for marketing, transport and administration and how we try to calculate it. So let's assume the first diagram here. In the first diagram here, Christaller explains a K value for market. Now how do we calculate the K value for market? This is the main center. This is the periphery point or the edge points of this hexagon. Okay. Now this edge point are serving into 3 regions. So I can say this edge is serving this region, and this region. So each point is basically serving 3 nodes. So it's 1, 2, and 3. So what's happening? This is fully served region, the innermost, plus 1/3 of every point is being served. So there are 6 points in all. So you are serving 1/3 of each point. So that is 1 plus 2, that is 3. So we can say for market the K value is 3. Now, what's important here is the location of settlements. So location of settlements are at the edge of the hexagon. Okay. So the next growth that would take place along would be again on the edge of the settlements. So slowly and gradually, what would happen? This the center settlement would try to emerge out, and the outermost centers would expand accordingly. So that means there would be, the hierarchy would be 1, 3, 3, 9, then you have 27, and you have 81. So that means this center would be served by 3 nearby settlements or regions, and then the higher order specialization of the large city would increase to 9, and it would be serving small 9 regions around it. So that importance of the center region would become 9 times the periphery. So that was as per the market principle. Now he talked about transport arteries. He said transportation always runs across edges. So in every hexagon, he said that the region would be between the edges, not on the corners. So when I'm saying it's between the edges, what I'm trying to do? I'm trying to draw another hexagon here. Okay. So basically, this is the region which is half served by this and half served by the nearby hexagon. Similarly, half would be served on both sides. So it's 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1, 2. So 50% probability of being served by this settlement, and 50% probability that this point would be served by the next settlement. So, and the innermost settlement is fulfilled by whole. So there is half probability that each of the 6 settlements would be served by either the hexagon 1 or the hexagon 2. So you have 1 plus 3. So the K value here is 4. That means the importance of the settlements would grow as 1, 4, 16, and 64. So it's kind of exponential growth. So the bigger settlement would be 16 times as much influential as the smaller settlement. So if I say it is a village, then you have a hamlet, and then you have a town, and finally a city. So I can say town is 16 times more influential in terms of services and hierarchy as compared to the village, and the city would be 64 times much more influential as compared to the village. So that's the hierarchy model for transport purposes, and as we know, we are trying to put out the points between the edges in case of transportation. So here are the points that we are taking. Now since we are taking these points, when I am drawing the next hexagon, it would be kind of matching it. So there would be a kind of linear pattern that would follow for hexagon. Okay. Then you have the administration. For administrative purposes, Christaller said that the settlements would be located inside the hexagon. So whole of the settlement is inside this hexagon. So it's fully influenced by itself. So you have 1 plus 6 into 1, so it's 1 plus 6, you have 7. So the K value is here is 7, and the growth would be 1, 7, 49, and so on. So this is the kind of hierarchy and the growth in the settlement. Now to get clear with this diagram, we'll move on to a figure that will help you understand the essentials for the K value. Now as we can see here, in this diagram, the points marked in green are the villages, which are small, and these green points are serving a market town area, which is blue in color. So these 6 regions are being served by this market, which is blue in color. Now these 6 blue try to serve a red region, okay, or a kind of town area here. So these 6 regions are trying to serve this town area, and finally these 6 town areas would try to serve this city area. So they are basically growing out in size. So what basically Christaller tried to explain based on this theory was the larger settlements is the settlement is growing in size, they are becoming lesser in number. So you just have one city here, you can see 4 towns and number of market towns and numerous villages. So large settlements are few in number. Since the settlement starts to become big, they try to move away from one another. So distances become between the settlement increases as the size of settlement increases. Then he also said that the range in the number of functions increase with the size of settlement. For example, this city region would be serving as a multi-specialty hospital, R&D lab, you can have airport, computing services and lot more. But a village out here would be only serving the local needs of the people, that is the basic fruit shop, grocery shop, and kind of milk products and the daily needs of the persons. So the range in number of functions increase in size as the settlement increases. And the final important thing the Christaller theory propounded was the number of higher order services also increases with the increase in the size of settlement. So as and when the settlement tries to grow big and big, the number of services that are being served by that settlement also pretend to increase. Okay. So with this, I'll try to introduce to you a Christaller model which has been taken from Wikipedia. So you can see here how the settlement is trying to grow. So here you can see the blue comes up over so you have the pink, then you see the purple regions growing up. You have further regions growing out, and slowly and gradually you have a whole kind of settlement network that is growing up. And there are 4 points here. You have the 4 regions here that would be growing into importance. So that was like an animated demonstration of what we can say how the Christaller models work. Finally, we'll be talking about the criticism of Christaller's theory. Now, Christaller theory has been criticized on numerous grounds. The first and the foremost thing that was considered while criticizing the theory was it focused only on the service sector. It also focused that the settlements can develop because of the natural resources, and it's not only due to the number of regions that are being served or the specialties that a settlement is being provided. So that was again a criticism. Then he also said the criticism also focused that we cannot say there is an isotropic plain area, which is not reality. Also, uniform distribution of population is not possible. The fertility of the soil, the climate of the region, everything changes very frequently. As a result of that, the spatial structure can be distorted, and we cannot say that we can maintain all these uniformly. So whatever the assumptions were there became the major criticisms for the Christaller's theory. Besides that, there are few more things that the Christaller tried to explain. Christaller forgot to explain was the concept of agglomeration. Because his theory is not a kind of all-inclusive general theory, it forget the impact of agglomeration or a kind of growing urban centers nearby one another. And also, he did not mention the effect of shadow. What is shadow effect? Shadow effect is a kind of effect that is being given by the major urban center, which inhibits the growth of nearby centers. So, a basic urban center would try to slowly and gradually diminish the importance of the nearby small towns. So, that is again a major criticism of the theory. Now, we have talked about the criticisms, assumptions, and everything, but there are real world distortions for Christaller's theory. Now, what are the real world distortions we can say? We talked about the transport network. we say that transport runs across edges and there would be settlement within the center of the edges. But if I say here is the main transport artery, here is the main transport artery that is going through. Okay, here is another town that is prevalent. Now, slowly and gradually, what would happen is the shape of the transport pattern will try to distort, or the hexagon will try to distort. Now, what would happen? All the region that is lying within this zone would prefer to go to region A rather than region B because the transportation network is much more better here. Okay, so people lying here would prefer to go to A and not B because the transport network is much more smoother here. So here are the distortions that were also considered for the transportation concept that was given by Christaller. So we can say that Christaller gave the theory that was applicable to the model propounded in 1930s in Germany, which mainly dealt with a kind of agrarian setup and farmstead, small farmstead which had to fulfill their demands from the huge city centers. But this really does not work in the present day situation a lot. Then he also gave a concept that the model which is growing on the based on market principle will grow just on the market hierarchy. That is, the importance of market would be much more higher in those regions as compared to other areas. And finally, for the transport network, the market would grow based on the transportation. Thereafter, there were further modifications in the Christaller's model, which were propounded by Losch, where he tried to say that there is a kind of continuum, and we can say that the k values of 3, 4, and 7 can kind of overlap and follow up, coexist. Whereas Christaller said that they exist independently. So where there is market principle coming up, all the settlements will grow as per the market principle. Where there is transportation arteries that are coming up with importance, all the settlements would grow up as per the transport network. So that was the basic concept that Christaller gave, and later on, whatever modifications came, they tried to say that all the features coexist in reality. So we have talked about the Christaller's theory today. We will be talking about the further theories on central places in the forthcoming lectures. So stay tuned for further updates. Have a good day ahead.